And I think that you have to hit a really hard brick wall before it's enough to make you change your behavior and your thought process.
I am curious now, if this sickness didn't come to you, would you still be in, would you have continued in corporate life?
I think
Hello, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining us today once again. How are you doing, by the way?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for having me back again.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Barbara was with us already when she showed us Thailand. But today I asked her to join us and share her knowledge on travel blogging, how to start when people are advising you not to start. Because Barbara, can you remind me, did you start writing back in 2005?
No, I actually started the blog in November of 2006 as I was preparing to leave my job. And then I started traveling full time in, March or April, I guess, of 2007. So I was just sort of getting things together at that point and trying to sell my house. And I moved to Florida and found a place down there, an apartment, and sort of didn't really get started until the first quarter of 2007.
So you started writing in 2006, but you started traveling in 2007. So did you write about your desire to travel, or did you write the things in your city? How did you start?
Oh gosh, that's a long time ago. You're testing my memory. I think because 2007, I was in real estate at the time. I was a general manager for 4 Remax franchises and broker in charge, and had my own team of 5, and had a development company where I bought and sold properties and built properties and then flipped them. And so that was sort of the beginning of when the market went down, when we had the recession.
Yeah.
And I had tried to sell my house for a year and was unsuccessful. So I kind of was looking at, I did finally sell the house. I sold it at a loss, but I had enough equity in it to kind of start my journey around the world. Mm-hmm. And I started talking about, this is retirement for me. I'm retiring from real estate, but I'm going to start traveling. And a lot of it in the beginning was the process that I went through for selling my house and how difficult that was, and deciding to go to Florida to live. And, and then it sort of transitioned when I got on the road into mostly travel content.
Okay. So the writing came after, in a way. Is that what you say? You started traveling, and then the whole idea was to travel, not to write.
No, the whole idea was, both things. So 3 things, actually: travel, photography, and writing. It's all I'd ever wanted to do, is be a travel writer. And, I got stuck in corporate life for 36 years and hated it. And finally, I don't know how much of this, I don't remember if we talked about it in our last session, but I got very sick and looked at my life and realized that, what good was life if I was never going to get to do what I always wanted to do? So I took a year to try and put things in place so that I could leave. I had a number of properties I had to sell, had a house I had to sell. I had to help my boss with me leaving the company, etc. And so it was always intended for me to be a travel writer. But you have to remember that at that time, blogs were in their infancy. I mean, they were being used by teenagers as diaries, and they were sharing them among themselves. So there was no such thing as a blog as we knew it today. And the only reason I started my blog is because, my family thought I was absolutely nuts. You're going to walk away from a really successful career and do what? Take pictures and write stories? And frankly, I worried that they would try and have me committed or something. That might, it's a bit of a stretch, but, they were not happy. And my father especially was very fearful about me going out on the road on my own, and was convinced that I was going to get killed.
Mm.
So I said, okay, I will start a website, because he didn't know what a blog was. I'll start a blog and I'll write on it every day so that you know where I am and what I'm doing, and that I'm okay. And that was, I started it in November 2006, hit the road in early, March or something, 2007, went out for 6 months and traveled to about 17 countries. And by the time I came back, I had about 1,200 people reading my blog.
Mm.
And I thought, well, gosh, maybe I can really do something with this. Because in those days, 1,200 people that was a big audience,
It was,
So
yes.
so I decided to do that. I came back home. I finally got my house sold at that point, used the proceeds from the house to, I kind of poured some money into the blog to have a professional design done and to live on as I continued to travel for the next few years. And it wasn't until about 2.5 years after I started that I started making money on the blog.
Mm. So your dad was your first subscriber. That's lovely. It's good to have. It's good to have.
We didn't even have subscriptions in those days, but he read every single blog and he would go back. I found out later on, he would wait a couple of weeks and he'd go back to one and he'd look at the comments and he'd read everything that everybody had said about it. And in fact, my dad had a very strong influence on my photography because I'd always been sort of looking for the pretty picture. If I go somewhere, I'm waiting at the Eiffel Tower for everybody to clear out, so I have this postcard picture. And my dad said to me one day, "Where are the people in your photos?" I don't want to see the pretty pictures. I want to see the people. What do they wear? What is their life like?
Wow.
What food do they eat? And that really, he was responsible for me sort of morphing into a blog about culture around the world. So after that, I never worried about having people in my photos.
Yeah, plus that will save you time, waiting for all the people to clear in attractions like the Eiffel Tower, for example. That you need to have snacks with you, for the waiting time.
Well, and if you're traveling with somebody that has infinite patience, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is really amazing, because one people would say, oh, I didn't chase my dreams when I was 25. Now it's too late. That's one thing that people say. And the other thing that people say is like, oh, I have this career, it's okay now. I know I don't like it, but it's too late. And you weren't in your 20s when you did that, and also you were in a high position. It's not like you were working McDonald's and you say like, oh, okay, the hell with it. But you're in a high position, you're a manager, and you had people as well. So really big respect that you chase what you like. But all these people, and I'm sure it wasn't only your dad, and there were many people, probably your manager as well, saying like, are you crazy? Like, are you mad? Why the hell are you doing this? Stay here in a comfortable spot. Where are you going? So what did you tell them? Did you tell them anything or just ignore them? And how did you take that?
I had the owner of the company and his wife were very good friends of mine. I worked for them for 10 years. And they were always extremely supportive people. And I had told him once a few years before that I was going to do this, that I was going to go travel and leave. And he was very supportive. But he didn't believe me. And of course, I changed my mind because I hadn't yet gotten really sick. And you come up against that fear. Well, if I do this, how am I going to pay the mortgage, and how am I going to make the car payments and pay the insurance and all of that? And it is a factor. It's something that you have to consider. So this was, I don't know how many years later, 3 or 4 years later, after I got sick, and I told him I was going to do what we talked about before, and that I would give him a year's notice. And he was, again, completely supportive. I don't think he really believed me this time either.
Maybe that's why he was supportive. Like, yeah, okay, sure, okay.
But you know what? He's still one of my biggest fans. He reads all of my articles. I mean, we communicate by email and messenger. And, I can't say enough about those people because they understood that you have to do what makes you happy. And that's a rare thing in a boss. As far as my other friends, I think that a lot of them were in doubt that I would ever do it. I was 54. You talk about age. It's never too late.
Mm.
And at 54, to walk away from, 36 years of corporate life, I wasn't always in the same job, but I was always in management positions. And I think you have to hit some sort of a brick wall, because throughout my life, I had never been happy in corporate life. I can't stand corporate politics. And I would work 8 or 10 years at a company and then finally burn out and leave.
Mm.
And the idea, I'm never going to recreate this stressful situation. But then the doubt starts to creep in about the bills and such. And somebody offers you a job that you think you can't possibly turn down, because where am I ever going to find an offer this good again? So you take it, and the whole cycle starts all over and over again. And I think that you have to hit a really hard brick wall before it's enough to make you change your behavior and your thought process.
So in your case, your wall is your sickness.
It was.
So now you're healthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I got some stiff joints. I had Lyme disease, as you may remember, and the Lyme disease was chronic Lyme disease. So I had it 5 years before they found it. So it invaded my joints, and I struggle sometimes with, sore knees and a hip that's bad. But other than that, I'm perfectly healthy.
It's funny, but at least what I believe in is that health is related to happiness. So if you're unhappy, there's a bigger chance that you won't be unhealthy. But I am curious now, if this sickness didn't come to you, would you still be would you have continued in corporate life?
I think I would have. I don't think I would have. Nothing else would have been strong enough to make me change my life. And you have to, well, again, I don't know, can't remember if we talked about this or not, but I've been through some other crises in my life. I battled alcoholism and drug addiction.
Oh, wow.
And also almost died of that. So, I mean, I'm a really lucky woman, because I should have been dead 2 or 3 times over. There was an incident in my young life when I nearly drowned. So I don't know why I'm still here. I guess, I don't know, the universe wasn't finished with me. But it did really take that Lyme disease and thinking that I was going to die before I, made the changes.
So okay, what do you think? Because I have my situation is that I have been chasing happiness, and luckily I didn't have to hit any walls in order to do that so far. And I've been downgrading to jobs just to go into the field that I like. And there are some people that as well, like, oh, you're crazy. You don't get that much money there. Why are you going? They're looking at the money. But for people who are unhappy with their situation and they're not chasing what they like and they still haven't hit the wall, what would your advice be?
Well, let me say that I think that the younger generation is miles ahead of us. I'm going to be 69 here pretty quickly. And I was brought up by parents who worked hard all of their life, and they instilled in me a very strong work ethic and, honesty and integrity. And of course, that all becomes stuff that you have to deal with when you're thinking of making a change and recreating yourself. I think that the younger generation, both the millennials and the Gen Xers, are much more aware of the fact that material things don't bring you happiness. And it took me a long time to realize that, because I was so miserable during my corporate years, but then I would buy something and that would make me happy for a while. And then I would get into another bout of misery and, I'd buy a bigger house and move into a bigger house. And, at the end of it, I was in a 3,500 square foot house with 5 bedrooms and a home office and 12 and a half acres of wilderness and 600 feet on the water and all alone.
Wow.
So it was absolutely craziness, right? And I was working 80 hours a week. And then when I was home, we had snakes in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So I had to do, landscaping. You've got to keep the litter, the leaf litter and such away from the house, or you end up getting snakes. So I was just beating myself to death. And the more stuff I had, the worse it got. But I look at my nieces, for instance, and they've got it together. They understand what it is that's truly important in life. And it's not, let's face it, we all have to have money. We have to eat. We have to have a place to live. But we don't need as much as we think we do.
I agree. I definitely agree. And if you think about it, it's crazy that some people these days, they live and they don't know the life pre-internet. They don't know what it was. If I go and meet my friends, the way we do it, we arrange a meeting at school. Like, okay, 3:00 at the fountain, and then you go up 3:05, and then nobody's there, and then you don't know, like, have they been there? Are they gone? Like, what's happening? And then you meet next day at school. Where did you go? Nowadays, just like, hey, where are you? Different days. And I keep saying to people that this is the greatest era we live in, because if we didn't have the internet, what do you think will be your situation? Like traveling, you wouldn't be able to write to your father?
Well, I could still have written. I could have written in magazines. It's just that the venues have changed. And in terms of traveling, I always traveled. From the time I was 18, the minute I was old enough, I had a car and I traveled across the country camping. So I will say that sometimes I look back on those things and I think, how the heck did we ever do that? I've got my map with the GPS on my phone that lets me know which way to turn from the train station to get to my hostel or my hotel. And I'm way too dependent upon that. But those are the tools that we have today that we didn't have. In some ways, it was more adventurous before.
It was definitely. I remember when we were doing road trips with my family, and my father was with a big paper map the night before. Like, which road should we take? Oh, okay, we're gonna go here. Oh, okay, whatever. You said you'll be writing to magazines, but the magazines need to approve you first, right?
Yeah, I could. What I meant was, if I had been a travel writer in those days, I wouldn't have needed the internet. I would have been publishing in magazines or maybe newspaper sections. So there were a handful of very good travel sections around the country. The San Francisco Examiner, the Washington Post had a great one. There was another one in Georgia, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So there were a number of them who hired people to write stories. And then, of course, there were quite a number of travel magazines in those days. Most of those have gone away. I don't think there's a single newspaper travel section that does their own now. There might be some syndicated content, and most of the magazines have gone away. And those that have stayed have associated online versions with their print versions, because it's the online that's making the money now,
Yeah, well, I wouldn't know because I don't read newspapers. But newspapers and news, I stay away from these things. But my point is that you can write to magazines, newspapers, but then you are in the mercy of someone that can always say, no,
absolutely,
you're not good enough, or it's not what we're looking for.
Was you would have to pitch the article. And I did this in the beginning because everybody said, you can't possibly start a travel blog. You have no portfolio, you have no references, you have no clips to show. And so I thought, well, I'd better, even if I have to write for free in the beginning, I'd better get some clips that I can show people. Yeah. So I was living in Florida at the time, and I wrote for things like Sarasota Magazine and gosh, I can't even remember. So Creative Living and a number of different things. And yeah, you have to pitch the article. And that means that we did have email in those days. And so you send an email to the editor and you say, this is a story I want to write. And you have to come up with some sort of a very creative title, subject line for the email, as well as the first 2 or 3 lines of the email have got to be really strong, because they're getting hundreds of these. So what do you do to make yourself stand out? And then if you get selected, you're at the mercy of an editor who, maybe they give you an assignment for 500 words and they decide they don't have enough advertising, so they either cut the article altogether or they have to cut it to 300, and they just butcher the heck out of it. And they're always telling you what they want you to write instead of what you want to write, and it's much different these days.
Yeah, much different. Okay, well, that was great. Do you have anything to add to the subject, or if you have any advice for people who are unhappy with their career, like closing statement or something, that would be fantastic.
Oh gosh. Well, I would say that, everybody's situation is different. And I am unique in that I had no husband, I had no children. So I could take off, and I had only me to be responsible for. Other people might not have quite that situation. There's people who have families, but what I would say is, don't let the money hold you back. If my way of doing things, my mother once said to me, "You're getting older. How many times can you recreate yourself in this life?" And I looked at her and I said, "As many times as I need to." And I have always been successful at doing that. If I have an idea what I want to do, and as long as I can visualize it right down to the very last detail, then I can usually make it happen. I do think that we create our own reality. And I did that with the blog. I had a vision of what my life would be like, where I would be staying, where I would be going, how I would get along. And, I looked back on that several years after I'd done it and thought, my God, I was, right on the money with the way I envisioned this process. Because I spent 8 years on the road with me and my suitcase only and no home base, because I had sold my house and I could not afford to do what I was doing and support a house also. So I chose to go homeless. And that's another whole story. I actually had people give me money one time because they thought I was truly homeless. But, there's always a way to do it. You have to have faith in yourself. You have to visualize what it is. You have to be clear about what it is you want to create. And then I would say, faith and fear can't live in the same place together. You just have to have faith in yourself that it's going to happen. And you don't do actualizations and say, I will have enough money, or I don't know, I will be skinny, because that's all in the future. If it's always in the future tense, it never is today. So you have to say, I have all the money I need. I have all the talent I need. I have all the support I need. Everything should be in the present moment, and putting it in that context helps to give you the faith that you need to accomplish the goal.
Wow. That was some motivational speech over there. Whew. I feel pumped. I feel I need to do something after this call. You're right.
Well, I wish I could do something. I'm not that it's a bad place to be trapped, but I'm trapped in Thailand, and I probably won't get to do any international travel until the end of this year. So it'll be almost 2 years since I've had an international trip.
Wow, it must be a burning feeling for a travel blogger not to travel, but
I'm doing domestic travel. So.
It is what it is. You see, explore the country there. Okay, well, perfect. That was fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us again and sharing some more insight of your beginnings. It was great, and I wish you a fantastic evening with you.
Thank you. Same to you, and thanks for having me again.